Okay, we're gonna get started. Hi, everybody. I'm Mark Masulo. Nice to see you. So this morning, we have a treat. Ainslie Course and her husband, Pete Course, whom I met yesterday for the first time. Hi, Pete. Good morning. We'll be talking about the patient and caregiver experience. And Ainslie, instead of giving your bio, I just want to say a few words about what I know of you, okay? So I met Ainslie at my first conference in 2016, and she gave a patient perspective presentation. And I was really nervous about going to the conference. It was my first time, really shy, reserved, wasn't talking to anybody, wanted to, but was afraid to. And so Ainslie gave this patient perspective presentation. And afterward, I went up to her and thanked her and said, thank you for sharing your story. And she said, it wasn't just my story, it was the story of all of us. And that really stuck with me. And that speaks to who Ainslie is, I think. Generous of spirit. If you don't know her, you need to get to know her. So really welcoming, and the wardrobe changes at conferences. Ainslie, I don't know. Yeah, many wardrobe changes. So anyway, I'm not going to take up your time any longer. So I'm going to move on and let you tell your story. But I feel really privileged to be able to introduce you today and to call you my friend. So,
and that works both ways. Okay. You know you're very special to me, and thank you. You nearly made me cry before I started.
Oh goodness. Well, mission accomplished. No.
Got my tissues.
Okay.
Thank you, Mark. So good morning, everyone. My name is Ainslie Course, and I sit on the board of Cluster Busters, and I'm very proud to do that. I'm going to start, this is my husband, Peter, and I'm going to start with just a little bit of a brief history about my cluster journey. So I'm a 35 plus year survivor, and I use the word survivor. Personally, I don't like the word sufferer. So I term myself as a survivor. So I had my first cluster headache in March of 1985, around 2 a.m. Never really been a headachy person. The only kind of headaches I had were sort of lack of sleep as a teenager, but I'd never really even had to take anything for a headache. I was never unwell. And I woke up from my sleep at 2 o'clock in the morning with this most brutal, violent pain that I've ever experienced in my life, and I just did not know what was happening. And when I woke up to it, it was already really very established. It wasn't a pain that crescendoed, it was already there, and it was fierce, very intense. And this went on. I was restless. I was in bed, I was out of bed, I was 19 years old, I was living at home with my parents, I was studying, and I just thought, you know, what the hell, what is this? What's happening to me? I really thought I was dying. I thought I've got some, I don't know, some sort of brain disorder, tumor, am I having a hemorrhage? What's going on? But everything worked, everything in my body worked, but this pain was just off the scale. It gives me the shivers even to think about that first attack. So it stayed with me for maybe about an hour and a half. I didn't even go and wake my parents. I kind of paced around my room, clutching my eye and one side of my head, and it was just ferocious. It was awful. So this happened again. It didn't happen the next night, but you know, we're going back 35 years. It's a long time, but you know, these were every maybe every second night, sometimes 2 nights in a row, sometimes during the day, but not anywhere near as bad. And I thought, you know, I've got to go and see someone about this. So this started a journey with many doctors and many neurologists. And it was just kind of said to me by the GP, you know, you're 19 years old, you're a student, you're probably burning the candle at both ends, you may be drinking too much, and I didn't drink at all. You know, you've probably got migraine. Is this hormonal? Is it around your menstrual cycle? And it wasn't, you know. So here are some tablets. Try these and see if this makes any difference. So to fast forward, I saw dozens of GPs, many neurologists, loads of medications. I kind of lost count, but I think somewhere in the region of 50 or maybe even closer to 60 different medications that they tried, and nothing worked. I also tried a lot of holistic things. I clutched at straws. I had lots of different things to try, and nothing worked. And then these headaches would maybe hang about for anywhere between 6 and 12 weeks, and then they would disappear. And they would disappear for various different lengths of time, sometimes maybe just 6 months, sometimes 9 months, sometimes a tiny little bit longer. And, you know, when they came back, I would go back to the doctor and say, you know, these headaches are back, what can you do for me? And it didn't take very long for me to be labelled as a drug seeker. And for anyone who attended Wes Helm's presentation last night, he was also labelled as a drug seeker. Now, I didn't want to be taking these tablets. I was a healthy young woman who didn't even take a couple of Tylenol, you know, I'd never ever had to. And a lot of these medications made me a lot worse. So I just kind of rode these out, and, you know, it was difficult to ride them out, but, you know, it was migraine. I kept saying to the doctor, well, you're giving me migraine meds and it's not making any difference. And then it was suggested to me that perhaps, you know, my problem wasn't neurological and it was psychological, which I knew it wasn't. So eventually, I actually bummed along like this for about 15 years. And eventually I managed to see an excellent neurologist privately in London, who diagnosed me within 5 minutes. He looked at my eye. I was in cycle at the time, and he said, you know, how often is your eye like this? And I said, well, my right eye is always smaller than the left eye since I started to get these headaches. And I said, you know, sometimes it's worse than others. When I have an attack of these migraines that I'm told I have, you know, this eye goes really tight and really small, and it weeps, and my right nostril is completely blocked, and sometimes that's actually a sign for me before I even get any pain. You know, I feel like I can't breathe at all through that nostril, it's completely blocked. And he said to me, before he even examined me, you have cluster headaches. And it was fantastic to have a name for what I had. So I said, you know, what do I do? So he said, well, I want to prescribe you injectable sumatriptan. I want to prescribe you medical oxygen for home use. And I'll write to your GP, and he will put all this in place. And I went to see my GP, and my GP did not agree with the diagnosis that had been made by this world-renowned neurologist. And I actually found out later that the reason he didn't agree with the diagnosis was because he did not want to prescribe me injectable sumatriptan or oxygen because of cost. And I found that highly offensive. You know, you would not withhold medication for any other conditions or diseases, and why would you do this for me? You know, so I fought this decision by my GP, and I went to my primary care trust and raised a complaint, and I eventually got my sumatriptan and I got my oxygen, and it was a game changer for me. It was wonderful. 15 minutes and my pain was gone. However, I realised through some years that the more sumatriptan I used, the more I needed. And, you know, my headache attacks were doubling and my cycles were lengthening, not just by weeks, but by months. And that's really when I was introduced to Bob Walt and Cluster Busters. And I don't know if Bob is watching this at the moment. I know he was doing a demonstration earlier, and he'll hate me for this, but I'm going to say it anyway. Bob Walt saved my life, quite literally saved my life, because suicide was often in my thoughts. Not because I wanted to die. I had a wonderful husband and two wonderful children, and you know, I had great family, and I didn't want to leave them, but I couldn't see any other option for me when I was enduring this brutally violent pain on a way too regular basis. I could not see any other way of ending it. So in an attack, in a peak cycle where you're just being constantly hit, all I could think of was, I want to die, not because I want to die, but because I don't want to hurt like this, and I don't want to hurt my family, and I don't want my family to see me like this. And Cluster Busters, Bob, they saved my life. They showed me what to do. They told me what to do. And I followed it to the letter. And life changed for me in such a positive way. I got my life back. I started to be the old Ainslie again, the sociable Ainslie, the Ainslie that loves a party, the Ainslie that loves to put on her makeup and do her hair, instead of the Ainslie who hid in her room and wouldn't leave her house, even to go to the grocery store, for the fear that I was going to have an attack in public. Friends didn't understand, even some family members didn't understand, and it was, you know, oh, Ainslie's got one of her headaches again, you know, and you hear the stories of, oh, you know, I've had those headaches before, and I'm like, no, you have not had these headaches, and if you have had these headaches, God help you, you know. So life for me is great now. I don't use pharma medications. There is a place, I am not dissing pharma meds in any way whatsoever, and I would never ever shame anyone for their choice of treatment. It's a very individual thing. Pharma meds helped me, sumatriptan injectable helped me, but things had to change, and I haven't touched pharma meds now for, I think, probably in excess of 15 years. And even though I bust, I still get cycles, but they're nowhere near as bad as they used to be. They're still not nice, and I still dread them, and they still fill me with fear. But I guess what I've done is I've accepted that I have this condition. I have survived it. For many years, I questioned my strength, both physically and emotionally. Was I a weak person, that I couldn't stand this pain? What do other people experience who have cluster headaches? Do they feel the same pain as me? Do they want to punch their head? Do they want to do all these crazy things that if you don't have cluster headaches, you would think that you need to be locked up? And now I know that, yes, we do all experience the same pain. So life for me is good now. I embrace it. Instead of locking myself away, I go out. I prepare. I always have oxygen in my car. But you know, I don't stay as close to home when I go out. I just enjoy my life now, and the clusters come second instead of coming first. They commanded my life for a long time, a really, really long time. And I'm so glad that through the help of cluster busters and all the wonderful people that I've met, that is what's given me strength. That and this man who's sitting next to me just now, and my children. And I'm going to hand you over to Pete now to tell you a little bit about how it's been for him as my husband and biggest supporter.
Thank you. So, Ainslie and I have been together for 31 years, married now for 30 years. My first introduction to cluster headaches was in January 1989. Ainslie and I were at a party, believe it or not, middle of January in Scotland, but we were dressed in beach gear because it was supposed to be a beach party. Ainslie had what we now know was a cluster headache. At the time, she had this horrendous attack in her head. We managed to get her up to a child's bedroom so she could ride out the attack. And I was left going, wow. And I'm using words because I'm on that Zoom. What the hell was that? I think my words were a lot stronger at the time. So for me, how do you deal with this? It's been seeing your loved one in severe pain, but if you actually touch her, go anywhere near her head, it's the worst thing you can do. But your natural reaction is to want to cuddle her, to cherish her, and in fact, it's the worst thing you can do. Standing, looking at a room while your wife beats her head against a radiator or bangs a fist onto her head, knowing that you shouldn't do anything, for me was a very humbling life experience. We used to go to family dues, school, social events, etc. I would then have to explain why Ainslie had to leave early, or in fact, at the last minute, wasn't attending the event on dozens and dozens of occasions. And I'm sure people at the time used to think that we actually had huge arguments,
Yeah.
and that Ainslie had walked out on me because I was being a bit of a knob. But you just have to stand up and you just have to tell people, and you'd then say to them, you know, she's got really bad headaches, etc. And people used to look at me and go, headache, really? We'd be on holiday and Ainslie would have to kind of go into a quiet corner once she'd been given sumatriptan, to inject herself to try and get her cluster headache under control. The worst one we ever had was we were flying back from New York to Edinburgh, 37,000 feet. Ainslie had a cluster head. We got 5 hours to go. She's actually injecting herself on the plane in a seat. We ended up having to explain to our 2 children, now 29 and 22, Mum wasn't angry with them, wasn't upset with them. The fact that she was having a cluster head attack and needed to be solo and then not to go into that room to disturb her, etc., was not their fault at all, but it was a nature of her disease. And for me, because I ended up working away from home a lot, that heart-stopping moment, you're up waiting to leave 6 o'clock Monday morning. Ainslie's in cycle, I'm away till Thursday night. She's got 2 small children to look after. She can't even look after herself. What do you do? If I don't go to work, we don't have any money. Is that sensible? Is that me being selfish? God knows. It's a horrible, horrible decision. Sitting in a consultant neurologist appointment and realizing that he didn't actually know how to treat the condition. And I actually was getting to the point where I actually think I knew more than him about cluster headaches. It's quite a frightening experience to go through. And I suppose that, like Ainslie mentioned, Bob and cluster busters, realizing that we can actually live beyond cluster headache attacks and actually get life sort of organized, because there is more to cluster headaches than letting it consume you, to actually get on top of it, to actually deal with it, however you deal with it. And discovering alternatives, which for Ainslie has worked incredibly well. For me, the best analogy is like seeing the sun rising after a very stormy night. It's a beautiful dawn coming up, really was. And also my huge pride in the fact that Ainslie is now spending so much of her time and energy helping and advocating for cluster headaches, helping people who have this horrible disease try and get some life back beyond just worrying about the next attack. So that's our story.
I think what we do now is we try to pay forward what was given to us from cluster busters and from all the people in the cluster headache community worldwide. I mean, I have made friends, wonderful friends, that I know I can call them at 4 o'clock in the morning. I can call them at 2 o'clock in the morning. Even if they're hurting, they have time for me and to speak with me. And I think that's what we do, because we understand that nobody knows cluster headaches like a cluster head. And we speak about, I'm just going to damp your tears. We speak about this often, Pete, don't we? That, you know, and Pete said to me, you know, I can understand and empathise to such a degree, but I don't fully understand what you experience. I see it, but and he feels it in his heart, and not physically. And our daughter Francesca is here in the attendees somewhere, and our children have seen things that our children should never have seen. We are so lucky we have 2 absolutely wonderful human beings as children, Francesca and Thomas. And you know, there's 7 years between our children. Francesca now 29 and Thomas 22. And quite often our daughter was mum, because I wasn't able to be a mum. When my headache was over, I was back to mum again. But in those hours where I wasn't able to help myself, I couldn't help them. And we were very open and honest with our children, maybe not so much with Thomas because he was much younger, but you know, my husband has never known me without cluster headaches, and my children have never known me without cluster headaches. So they have grown up with this, and as I say, they have seen many things that they really shouldn't see. But I'd like to think that it's made them stronger, more compassionate human beings. They are very compassionate and very understanding, not just of me, but of everyone, especially with illness. They've been absolutely wonderful. As I say, they're amazing human beings, and we're so proud to be their parents. But there's always, excuse the sniffles here, I'm so sorry. As I say, they've seen so many things that they shouldn't have seen, but they kind of rise above it, and they understand that our family life with mum's headaches is a little different from other people's family lives, and they just kind of embrace it, and they got on with it. But all I can say is, you know, as both Pete and I have said today, please do not let this consume you. Please don't. I spent so many years, both of us, all of us as a family unit, letting clusters be the forefront of our lives. Everything we did, you know, nothing was spontaneous. Everything had to be planned around me. And there's always a guilt, and there always will be a guilt with me for what my children have had to endure, what my husband has had to endure, what they've seen. I can't imagine as a caregiver how horrible it must be to watch someone that you love in pain, in any kind of pain. I don't just mean cluster pain, but any kind of pain. That must be very difficult. I'm very lucky that Pete keeps good health, but I know when he was ill some 10 years ago with cardiac problems, with heart attacks, that was my first experience of my big, strong husband being unwell. And I didn't handle it very well at all. And I don't tend to handle other people's illnesses very well. You know, even coming from a nursing background, I was much more compassionate then. But now, you know, and I hear people complain, I'm like, you know, shut up. You don't know, you've got a cold, you know, get on with it. But when Pete was in hospital with heart attacks, you know, it was an eye-opener for me. It made me realise, you know, they're going to be able to fix him. It's going to be quick. And he had some stents put in, and within a week he was back home. So for me, it wasn't a lengthy chronic illness, although I'm not a chronic clusterhead. But, you know, I have been doing this for over 35 years. And, you know, it really was a massive eye-opener for me. How must this be for Pete? And I guess, to be really frank with you, I was probably a bit selfish. In fact, I was probably a lot selfish because I couldn't see beyond my own pain. I couldn't really see, well, I could kind of see that this was hurting my family, seeing me in pain, but, you know, it doesn't sound right to say that I didn't care. Of course I cared, but I just all I could think about was me. I had to get rid of this pain. How can I get rid of this pain? Get rid of the pain. When is it coming back? I'm scared for this pain to come back. I hate this pain. Please leave me. What have I done? You know, and you start to go through all different things. Am I being punished for, you know, what was a dreadful person in a former life? You know, I don't know, but you kind of feel that you're being punished, and why me? And then I realised that, you know, I was punishing the people around me for my pain, and that's when I really got a grip on this and thought, you know, this can't go on. But I just want to really say, on those good days, to get out there, you know, do something. Doesn't matter what it is. Call a friend, have a chat for 10 minutes. You're not comfortable leaving the house, just ring someone, message someone, speak to them, do something normal. But I just want to say, you know, to you, Pete, you're amazing. There've been many times where I've questioned, why does this man stay with me? Why, when this man comes near me when I'm in a cluster attack, and I tell him to F off, I scream at him to F off, and as he F's off, I scream at him to come back and not leave me. And 30 years, we were married 30 years on the 18th of August this year. And I'm forever grateful for him. And I'm forever grateful for my children. And I'm forever grateful for Bob Bald and Cluster Busters. And if anybody has any questions, as long as you don't mind all the snot dripping down our noses and the tear stains. I actually thought my makeup looked okay today, but maybe not so much now. We're happy to take any questions.
And we are forever grateful for you. Thank you, both of you. Your story is so powerful. As you talk about your journey to figuring out what was going on, I mean, as we can, just about all of us can relate to that aspect of your story, you know, the years or the length of time that we're experiencing the attacks and not knowing what they are, not knowing what to call them. They're migraines. No, they're not. Yes, they are. It's a sinus headache. Yeah. And you talk. You didn't say too much about this, but you did, but you not. So you had your diagnosis. You were having attacks before you met Pete. Just a few years, right? A few years.
I've been having attacks for about 4 years.
Before you met him.
Yeah.
And my remark is that it's a different experience. I too had was diagnosed, was having the experience of the pain before having met my husband. I mean, I'd had relationships with others before having met my husband, and was always self-conscious about sharing that part of myself.
Me too.
Pain part, like, oh, is he going to still like me? You know, no, he's going to hate me. And to help somebody understand what you're going through, but not wanting them to I have to understand, because how awful is it to understand that someone you care about is doing this?
I didn't tell Pete. I'm very, very private about this. I didn't know what it, as far as I was aware, I had migraine. That's what I was told. I had migraine. And I had friends who had migraine, and I'm thinking, well, their migraine isn't the same as my migraine, but, you know, okay. And migraine is a horrendous condition, and I'm not downplaying it in any way, but it wasn't what I had. So when Pete and I, as he told you, we went to this summer party in January in Scotland, when the snow was up to your thighs, and it was a summer themed party, and we were in shorts, you know. We were there for several hours and having a really good night, and then all of a sudden, as you guys know, bang, you know, and it's like, whoa. And you know, once I'd kind of pulled myself together after my attack was over, and he said, you know, he said, what was that? And I really liked him. You know, it was very early in our relationship, and I really, really liked him. And he hadn't showed his card, so I wasn't sure how he felt about me. So I was kind of holding back a little bit because I didn't want to be too bold. And I thought, that's it, you know, I've blown it. This guy, who wants to witness this? Who wants to be with a woman who goes through this, you know? And I said to him, oh, I have these terrible headaches, it's migraines, you know, like, don't worry about it. And little did you know that it would be a huge part of your life. But, you know, I know many people's relationships, with cluster headaches in a relationship is very difficult, and a lot of relationships don't last and don't break down. And that was always my real concern, that, you know, why does this guy put up with me shouting at him and, and not being very nice, being irrational, being completely out of character to what I would normally be like. But, you know, he stayed for the duration, you know, and he understood. I think it's important to be open with your partner, you know, about what this is like and what to expect, the good and the bad.
It's like having another party in the relationship, like having another figure in the relationship. The presence of the cluster headaches or the attacks, and making peace with an unwelcome presence who intrudes into your life and your relationship.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
We are about to wrap up. Is that right, Eileen?
Well, yeah, we are about to wrap up, but I'm sorry I haven't been able to actually listen to you talk, and I'm sort of glad because I'm not crying my eyes out right now. I started crying a little bit at the end. But Ainslie, did you talk yet about what's happening next week?
No, I'm going to do that now. So just before I hand back to Eileen for the conference farewells, I've been working on behalf of Cluster Busters with an organisation called the Conservative Drug Policy Reform Group, and their website is cdprg.co.uk, but I'll be putting all this on social media tomorrow. So I was due to do a presentation at the Houses of Parliament in London late March, but due to the virus, this was cancelled. And this is Cluster Busters representation in this organisation trying to reschedule psilocybin for medicinal use for cluster patients, and also for other problems that people have. So for veterans who have suffered PTSD, and also for people who have serious mental ill health, that they should not be judged on their use of psilocybin to treat these various different conditions. So now I'm actually doing a short Zoom presentation with them on Tuesday, and they have a, what do you call that, Pete? Oh gosh, I've lost my words. This sometimes happens with cluster headaches, of course. A petition.
Oh, petition. Yes, sorry.
So I'll be posting the link for that. So unfortunately, at the moment, it's only open to UK citizens, but we're hoping that the work that Cluster Busters is doing on this will help this to extend to other countries globally. So as I say, your support and signing the petition would be fantastic. And thank you all for being here today and listening to us.
Thank you both. Thanks so much. And thanks to everyone who attended and participated in the conference.